Look, I'm not saying Marcus Webb was an idiot. I'm just saying that when your cargo hauler's navigation system is held together with duct tape and optimism, maybe don't take the shortcut through the Kethra system during peak pilgrimage season. But Marcus Webb was never one for reading the room, or in this case, reading the 17 urgent space traffic warnings blaring through his comm system. Yeah, religious sanctuary, sacred airspace, blah blah, Marcus muttered, slapping the snooze button on his 6th collision alert. I've got a delivery deadline in the Proxima colonies, and I'm not spending 3 days in traffic because a bunch of aliens want to pray at a rock. That's when his port thruster decided to explode. Not dramatically, not in a Hollywood fireball kind of way, just a sad little puffed sound, followed by every warning light on his console lighting up like a disco ball having a seizure. Oh, come on. Marcus grabbed the controls as his ship, the reasonable excuse, started spinning toward the planet below. This is exactly why I don't do maintenance. 5 minutes of creative cursing and aggressive lever-pulling later, Marcus crash-landed in what he would later learn was the sacred garden of eternal contemplation. The ship plowed through approximately 400 years of carefully manicured meditation shrubs before coming to rest against a statue of some 6-eyed religious figure who now looked significantly less serene with a cargo hauler embedded in its torso. Marcus stumbled out of the airlock coughing. Well, that's going to cost me my deposit. He looked around. The planet was actually pretty nice, all things considered. Purple sky, 3 moons visible even in daylight, and architecture that looked like someone had given a cathedral and a spaceship a very complicated night together. Everything was pristine, peaceful, and completely devoid of helpful mechanics. In the distance, he could see what looked like a massive temple complex. Spires reached toward the sky, and a soft, pulsing glow emanated from somewhere in the center. Around the complex, thousands of different aliens milled about. He spotted at least 30 species he recognized and another 50 he didn't. Okay, Marcus said to himself. Find someone in charge, explain the situation, get some parts, fix the ship, get out before anyone notices the statue thing. He started walking toward the temple. As he got closer, he noticed that all the aliens were moving in the same direction, a sort of reverent shuffle toward the central building. They were also very quiet. Like, unnaturally quiet. The only sounds were footsteps and the occasional whispered prayer. Marcus, never comfortable with silence, started whistling. The effect was immediate. About 40 aliens turned to stare at him with expressions ranging from shock to horror. One species that looked like a floating jellyfish actually deflated in distress. Sorry. Marcus held up his hands. Didn't realize it was a no-whistling zone. He pushed through the crowd and into the main temple. The inside was even more impressive than the outside. Vaulted ceilings disappeared into darkness above. Bioluminescent moss spelled out text in about 100 different languages. And right in the center, surrounded by barriers, force fields, and what looked like the galaxy's most overbuilt security system, sat a stone. Just a stone. Roughly the size of a basketball, glowing faintly, sitting on a fancy pedestal. Marcus squinted at it. His cargo hauler experience kicked in. He'd shipped enough exotic minerals to recognize high-grade valensite when he saw it. Rare stuff. Exactly what he needed to patch his thruster housing. Can I help you, visitor? Marcus turned to find himself face to face with, or rather face to multiple faces with, a tall alien covered in ceremonial robes. 4 arms, 2 heads, and an expression on both faces that suggested Marcus had just tracked mud into a very expensive carpet. Oh, hey, yeah, Marcus said. My ship broke down outside. Garden thing. Sorry about the statue. Anyway, I need some valensite, and I couldn't help but notice you've got a big chunk of it just sitting here. So I was wondering if you dare. Both of the aliens' mouths spoke in perfect unison, which was creepy as hell. You dare speak so casually of the celestial stone? The what now? A smaller alien appeared, this one looking like a blue teddy bear with too many eyes. Oh dear, oh no, it squeaked. High Priest Vormesh. I'm sure the visitor means no disrespect. He's clearly not familiar with the sacred stone of Kethra. Clearly, Vormesh said, all 4 arms crossing. Perhaps he is unaware that this is the holiest site in the known galaxy. that beings travel for years to merely glimpse the stone from the outer galleries, that the stone has sat untouched for 10,000 years, because to touch it means certain death. Marcus looked at the stone again. Huh. Looks like Valancite to me. The small alien made a sound like a balloon losing air. I'm Pip, assistant to the High Priest, and I'm very sorry, but you seem to be having some kind of misunderstanding about— No misunderstanding, Marcus said. Look, I get it, religious thing, very important, but my ship needs repairs and that rock is made of exactly what I need. So what's it gonna take? Can I buy a chunk, trade something? I've got 300 kilos of freeze-dried Martian potatoes in my hold. Great for stews. Vormesh's faces went through several shades of purple. The stone is not for sale. The stone is not for trade. The stone is divine. It is the remnant of the first creation. To even suggest such blasphemy— Yeah, I'm getting a real no vibe here, Marcus said. Pip, apparently sensing that Vormesh was about 3 seconds from smiting someone, quickly inserted himself between the High Priest and the increasingly confused human. Perhaps, Pip said in a voice so soothing it was probably medically therapeutic, we should show our guest the proper protocols for approaching the sacred stone. I'm sure once he understands the significance, he'll appreciate why his request is, problematic. Problematic is one word for it. Vormesh growled, but he waved 2 of his hands in a gesture that Marcus assumed meant follow me. They walked deeper into the temple. The crowds grew thicker, more diverse. Marcus spotted a species that looked like a walking chandelier, having what appeared to be a deeply emotional prayer session with a group of sentient clouds. The stone, Vormesh began in a tone that suggested he'd given this speech approximately 10 billion times, was discovered here 10,000 years ago. Legend says it fell from the realm of the gods themselves. In all that time, no being has successfully touched it. Those who try are consumed by divine fire, their atoms scattered across the cosmos as a warning to the prideful. Sounds dramatic, Marcus said. Has anyone actually tried? Like recently? Pip consulted a data pad. The last attempt was 400 years ago, a warrior from the Krenth Empire. He got within 3 meters before his exoskeleton melted. Yikes. Indeed, Vormesh continued. To even view the stone from the inner gallery requires completing the 47 steps of spiritual preparation. Fasting, meditation, ritual cleansing, memorization of the sacred texts, 3 letters of recommendation from ordained priests, a background check, and a 15-page application form in triplicate. No. Marcus stared at him. You're joking. The application process typically takes 18 months, Pip added helpfully. 18 months to look at a rock. The stone, Vormesh corrected icily. They'd reached an outer viewing platform. A massive crowd of pilgrims stood in organized rows, all facing toward the center where the stone sat at least 100 meters away. Behind multiple layers of barriers, a priest was leading them through some kind of chant. It was very solemn, very reverent. Marcus's stomach chose that moment to growl loud enough that the nearest pilgrims turned to stare. Sorry, Marcus said. Haven't eaten since breakfast. Look, Vormesh, buddy, I appreciate the whole religious significance thing, but I've got a practical problem here. My ship is broken. That stone is made of material that can fix it. Surely there's some kind of exception process. Emergency clause? What if I paid a tourist tax or something? Vormesh looked at Marcus the way someone might look at a particularly stupid but persistent insect. There are no exceptions. The stone represents the ultimate truth of the universe. It is untouchable, unknowable, and utterly beyond the reach of mortal beings. But what if— No. I'm just saying, no. 500 kilos of potatoes. Leave this temple before I have you arrested. Is that actually an option? A new voice drawled from behind them. Marcus turned to see what looked like a lizard that had been stretched out, given a security uniform, and taught to look perpetually bored. A name tag identified him as Lieutenant Krell of the Temple Guard. This human is disturbing the peace, Vormesh said. I can see that, Krell said, not moving from where he was leaning against a pillar. Been disturbing the peace for about 20 minutes now. Whole temple's talking about the guy who crashed into St. Vexthor's statue. That was an accident, Marcus protested. Sure, Krell said. Look, here's the deal. You want to see the stone, you go through the proper channels. You want to touch the stone, you die. You want to blow up statues and bother priests during peak pilgrimage season, you go to jail. Simple. I like him, Marcus said to Pip. He's straightforward. Lieutenant Krell has been guarding the stone for 15 years, Pip said. Guarding is a strong word, Krell said. Mostly I stand around making sure pilgrims don't trip over each other. In 15 years, you know how many actual security incidents I've dealt with? 3. 2 of them were lost children. The third was a drunk Glorbian who thought the stone was a really fancy bathroom. What happened to him? Marcus asked. Found out real quick it wasn't a bathroom. Despite himself, Marcus laughed. Vormesh looked scandalized. This is exactly the kind of irreverence that threatens the sanctity of this place, the high priest said. The stone is not a joke. It is the foundation of our faith. Billions of beings across thousands of worlds look to it as proof that there is something greater than ourselves in this universe. Okay, Marcus said. But what if it's just a rock? The silence that followed was so profound that Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. Pip made a sound like a whimper. Krell pushed off from his pillar, suddenly interested. Vormesh's 4 hands clenched into fists. Just, Marcus continued, because apparently he didn't know when to shut up. Hear me out. What if 10,000 years ago, a meteor made of Valancite crashed here, and instead of studying it scientifically, everyone just decided it was magic? I'm not saying that's what happened, I'm just saying, has anyone checked? Get out, Vormesh roared. Yeah, Krell said, actually moving now. You should probably leave. But my ship, figure it out somewhere else, Krell said, not unkindly, before Holy Man over there figures out how to smite people. Pip was frantically gesturing toward the exit. Marcus took the hint. Fine, I'm going, Marcus said, backing away. But for the record, this is terrible customer service. He turned to leave, then paused. The stone was visible from where he stood, glowing softly in its nest of security systems. And Marcus Webb, cargo hauler, professional shortcut taker, and apparent theological troublemaker, made a decision. You know what? He said. I'm going to go look at it closer. Don't you dare, Vormesh started. But Marcus was already moving. He ducked under a ceremonial rope, hopped over a low barrier, and started walking toward the stone with the confidence of someone who had never let danger or common sense slow him down. Behind him, absolute chaos erupted. The alarm started first. A wailing siren that probably hadn't been used in centuries, judging by how rusty it sounded. Then came the screaming. Hundreds of pilgrims, suddenly confronted with someone actually approaching the sacred stone, reacted exactly how you'd expect deeply religious beings to react. They lost their minds. Stop him! Vormesh's dual voices created a stereo effect of panic. Security! Someone else yelled. Pip was making a sound that Marcus would later describe as a guinea pig being slowly squeezed. Krell actually smiled. You know what, human? I think you might actually survive this. And I'm very curious to see how. Pip handed Marcus a ceremonial robe, still trembling. For what it's worth, the small alien whispered, I hope you're divine. The alternative is that everything I've believed my entire life is wrong, and I'm not sure I'm ready for that. Marcus put on the robe. It was 3 sizes too big. Welcome to my world, buddy. I'm not ready for any of this either. The trials of godhood, as it turned out, were being held in the temple's grand arena, a massive amphitheater that could hold about 10,000 spectators. Apparently, word had spread fast because the place was packed. Marcus spotted representatives from species he'd only seen in textbooks, all jostling for a better view. No pressure, he muttered. Vormesh stood at the center of the arena, all 4 arms raised dramatically. Behold, his twin voices echoed. The human who claims to have touched the sacred stone and lived. Now he shall face the 7 trials of godhood. 7? Marcus called down from the preparation area. You said trials, plural, but you didn't specify 7. Would you prefer more? I'd prefer 0. The crowd laughed. Marcus was starting to realize he had a following. About half the amphitheater seemed to be rooting for him. The other half looked like they wanted to see him fail spectacularly. Either way, merchandise was being sold. The first trial, Vormesh announced, is the trial of wisdom. A god must possess knowledge beyond mortal ken. A panel slid open in the floor and an ancient-looking alien emerged. It was basically a brain in a jar with robot arms. Probably very wise, definitely very wrinkly. "I am Scholar Thexnor," the brain said. "I have studied the mysteries of the universe for 600 years. Answer my riddle and you pass. Fail, and be revealed as a pretender." "Hit me," Marcus said. "If a ship travels at light speed toward a star that is also moving away at light speed, and time dilates differently inside the ship than outside, what is the nature of the observer's reality?" The crowd went silent. This was apparently a very serious philosophical question. Marcus thought for exactly 3 seconds. "Relative? Reality's always relative to the observer. Einstein figured that out, like way back. Same event, different perspectives, all equally valid. Next question." Scholar Thexnor's jar bubbled with what might have been surprise. "That's actually correct, but can you elaborate on—" "Look," Marcus interrupted. "Here's what I know. I've hauled cargo across 30 systems. Every species experiences time differently. The Christids perceive 3 dimensions of time. The Vordians don't experience it linearly at all. Humans are stuck with boring forward-only time. But here's the thing, we all have to work together, which means accepting that my reality isn't the same as yours, and that's okay. That's not philosophy. That's just practical multiculturalism." The scholar stared at him. The crowd murmured. "He sounds profound," someone whispered. "He sounds like he's winging it," someone else replied. "Maybe that's what makes him divine," a third voice suggested. Vormesh looked annoyed. "Fine, you pass. Next, the trial of strength." A massive door opened, and something that looked like a tank with legs stomped into the arena. It was easily 3 times Marcus's height and made of what appeared to be solid muscle and bad intentions. "I am Warlord Krax," it bellowed. "I have conquered 17 worlds. Show me your divine strength, little human." Marcus looked up at the warlord. "Yeah, I'm not fighting that." The crowd gasped. "You refuse the trial?" Vormesh said gleefully. "No, I'm just not stupid." Marcus walked over to a control panel on the arena wall. "See, humans aren't actually that strong compared to most species. We're kind of squishy, but we're great at problem solving. For example," he pressed a button. The floor panel under Warlord Krax suddenly tilted. The massive warrior, caught off balance, slid sideways and crashed into a support pillar. "We're also pretty good at using leverage," Marcus said. Krax stood up looking confused. "That's cheating." "That's engineering," Marcus corrected. "Also, fun fact, I've been standing here in full Earth gravity for about 30 minutes now. Your arena appears to be calibrated for the local standard, which is about 85% Earth normal. So, technically, I'm constantly demonstrating superhuman strength just by not falling over." Pip was frantically consulting his datapad. "He's correct. Earth gravity is significantly higher than Kethra normal. By local standards, he's been operating under enhanced difficulty this entire time." "That's not divine strength," Vormesh protested. "You didn't specify what kind of strength," Krell called from the audience. He'd gotten popcorn from somewhere and was clearly enjoying the show. Vormesh ground his teeth. "Fine. Trial 3, the trial of immortality." A medical drone floated forward, carrying a vial of something that glowed ominously. "This is the plague of ages," Vormesh said. "It has felled entire civilizations. A single drop can kill a mortal in seconds. A god would be immune." Marcus eyed the vial suspiciously. "What exactly is in that?" "Divine retribution, medically speaking." The medical drone consulted its database. Pathogenic microorganisms, viral strains, bacterial cultures, and one very aggressive fungus. "From where?" "Various worlds throughout the sector." Marcus thought about it. "Hit me." They administered the plague. The crowd held its breath. Marcus stood there, waiting. After about 30 seconds, he sneezed. "Bless you," Pip said automatically. "Thanks, is something supposed to be happening?" The medical drone scanned him frantically. "Impossible. His immune system is fighting off everything. No, wait, it's already won. The microorganisms are dead." "Yeah, human immune systems are kind of overachievers," Marcus said, wiping his nose. "We evolved on a planet that was actively trying to kill us for millions of years. Bacteria, viruses, parasites, we've seen it all. Our bodies are basically tiny war zones 24/7. "That's horrifying," Pip said. "That's evolution, baby." The crowd was going wild now. Half were chanting Marcus's name. The other half were having religious crises. Vormesh looked like he was about to have an aneurysm, assuming he had anything in his anatomy that could aneurysm. "The remaining trials," Vormesh shouted desperately. "Trial of fire, trial of void, trial of truth, trial of—" "Actually," Krell interrupted, standing up, "I think we've seen enough." "You have no authority here, Lieutenant." "Sure I do. Temple security. And I'm calling this. The humans passed every test you threw at him, and you're clearly just making up new ones because you don't like the results." Vormesh turned on Krell. "This human is undermining 10,000 years of faith, or," Krell said calmly, "he's showing us that faith needs to evolve. Because here's the thing, Vormesh. You said only gods can touch the stone. This human touched it. So either he's a god, which means gods are way more mundane than we thought, or the stone isn't as divine as we believed, which means we've been wrong for 10 millennia. Either way, something's got to change." The arena went absolutely silent. Marcus raised his hand. "Can I say something?" "Please don't," Pip whispered. "I'm gonna." Marcus walked to the center of the arena. "Look, everyone, I'm not a god. I'm barely qualified to operate my own spaceship, as today clearly demonstrated. But I think I figured out what's going on here." He pulled out a small scanner from his pocket. "This is a standard radiation detector. Every cargo hauler has one. And right now, it's going crazy. That stone you all worship? It's putting out massive amounts of exotic radiation, stuff that's harmful to most species. Your protective barriers weren't keeping people away from divinity. They were keeping people safe from radiation poisoning." Vormesh staggered backward. "No. Here's the thing, though," Marcus continued. "Humans? We're weirdly resistant to this specific type of radiation. Something about our sun back home produces similar wavelengths, so we evolved defenses against it. That's not divine immunity. That's just cosmic coincidence." The crowd erupted in chaos. Arguments broke out. Philosophical debates turned into shouting matches. Someone threw what appeared to be a holy relic at someone else. Pip was crying. "Everything we believed isn't necessarily wrong," Marcus said gently. He crouched down to Pip's level. "Look, the stone is still special. It's still rare, still beautiful, still brought your species and thousands of others together in peace for 10,000 years. That matters. Maybe the miracle isn't that it's untouchable. Maybe the miracle is that it made everyone believe in something bigger than themselves." "But it's not divine," Pip sniffled. "Maybe divinity's in what we make of things," Marcus said, "not what they are." Vormesh sat down heavily. For the first time, he looked old and tired. "You're saying we've been fools. I'm saying you've been faithful," Marcus corrected. "There's a difference. And honestly, faith isn't about being right. It's about what it makes you do. If the stone made you build this place, create peace between species, give billions of beings hope, that's pretty godly, actually." The amphitheater had devolved into controlled chaos. Different species formed debate circles. Some were angry, some were crying, a few were celebrating. One group in the corner had already started a new religion based on Marcus, which he found deeply uncomfortable. "Okay, everybody, simmer down," Marcus shouted. His voice didn't carry particularly well in the massive space, but Krell helpfully activated the arena's sound system. "Okay, everybody, simmer down." Marcus's voice boomed through speakers, causing several pilgrims to clutch their auditory organs in pain. "Sorry, not used to microphones. Look, can we all just take a breath here?" Surprisingly, people did. Or at least the ones with lungs did. The others did whatever their species did to calm down. Marcus continued, his voice now at a reasonable volume thanks to Krell adjusting the controls. I know this is a lot. Trust me, I didn't come here planning to destroy anyone's religion. I just needed to fix my ship. But since we're here, and since apparently I'm the guy who ruined 10,000 years of theology, let me just explain something about humans. He walked in a slow circle, making eye contact with as many different species as he could. We're curious, sometimes stupidly so. We see something glowing and mysterious, and our first instinct isn't to worship it. It's to poke it, scan it, figure out how it works. That's gotten us into trouble throughout our history. We've blown ourselves up a few times. We've poisoned our own planet. We've invented weapons that could end our species. This isn't helping your case, Pip whispered. But, Marcus continued, that same curiosity is also what saved us. We cured diseases. We reached the stars. We learned to live with AI, with genetic engineering, with quantum uncertainty, not by ignoring the scary stuff, but by understanding it, by asking questions even when the questions felt blasphemous. Vormesh stood up slowly, both his faces showing a complex mix of emotions. You're saying we should have questioned the stone centuries ago. I'm saying questions aren't the enemy of faith, they're part of it. Real faith doesn't shatter when you examine it. It gets stronger. Easy for you to say, someone in the crowd shouted. You're not the one whose entire worldview just collapsed. Actually, Marcus said, humans have been through this exact thing dozens of times. We used to think Earth was the center of the universe. Then we learned it wasn't. We thought we were biologically unique. Then we met aliens. Every time some people said learning the truth would destroy us, and every time we adapted, we grew. We found new things to believe in. Scholar Thexnor's jar bubbled thoughtfully. The human raises a valid philosophical point. Perhaps what makes something sacred isn't its unknowability, but how we choose to relate to it. Exactly. Marcus pointed at the brain jar enthusiastically. The stone is still amazing. It's a naturally occurring formation of incredibly rare valensite, which, by the way, only forms in supernovae. That means this rock is literally stardust from a dead star. That's not less magical because we can explain it. That's more magical. Pip's eyes widened. We're standing in the presence of a star's remains? Yep. And if we analyze the radiation signature, we could probably figure out exactly which star, when it died, what kind of planets it had. The stone doesn't just represent mystery. It's a record of cosmic history. That's a different kind of sacred. Krell walked down into the arena, abandoning his security post for probably the first time in 15 years. So what do we do now? We can't just pretend none of this happened. No, Vormesh said quietly. We can't. He looked around at the thousands of pilgrims, many of whom were looking to him for guidance. For 10,000 years, I and my predecessors have taught that the stone was untouchable, divine, beyond understanding. And now you teach something new, Marcus suggested. Teach that the stone is a gift, not a test. It brought you all together. Different species, different beliefs, all united by wonder. That doesn't have to change just because you understand the stone better. But the touch of divinity was radiation resistance, Marcus said, which, okay, sounds less cool when you say it like that. But here's the thing. I'm not special. Any human could have touched that stone. And you know what that means? It means divinity, or whatever you want to call it, isn't locked away in something untouchable. It's accessible. It's something you can study, understand, maybe even recreate. Pip gasped. You mean we could synthesize valensite? Create more stones? Theoretically. Maybe. But why would you want to? Marcus gestured around. This one's already here. It's already special. It's already brought you together. Making more wouldn't make them more meaningful. It'd just be making more rocks. Then what's the point? Vormesh asked, and he sounded genuinely lost. If it's not divine, if anyone can touch it, if we can understand it, what's the point of faith? Marcus thought about that. He thought about his own life, hauling cargo across the galaxy, never quite fitting in anywhere, always moving, always questioning. The point, he said slowly, is that faith isn't about not knowing. It's about choosing to find meaning anyway. You can know exactly how the stone works and still choose to see it as sacred. That's not weakness. That's actually kind of brave. Choosing to believe, scholar Thexnor mused. Even with full knowledge. Fascinating. Humans do it all the time, Marcus said. We know love is just chemicals in the brain, but we still value it. We know art is just pigment on canvas or sound waves in air, but it still moves us. Knowledge doesn't cheapen meaning. Sometimes it deepens it. Krell looked at the stone, still glowing on its pedestal in the center of the arena. So we keep the stone, keep the temple, but change what they represent? Change how you relate to them, Marcus corrected. The stone can still be sacred, but maybe now it's sacred because it taught you something, because it brought different species together to question, to learn, to grow. That's a better kind of sacred than just untouchable mystery. Vormesh was quiet for a long time. Both his faces showed deep thought. Finally, he spoke. I have been high priest for 40 years. My entire life has been devoted to protecting the stone's mystery, and now you ask me to embrace its revelation. I'm not asking you to do anything, Marcus said. I'm just a guy who crashed his ship and needed some metal. You decide what this means for your faith. But you want a piece of the stone. I need a piece of the stone, Marcus corrected. My ship's not flying without it. Vormesh looked at the stone, looked at the crowd, looked at Marcus. If I allow this, I'm admitting that the stone is material. Divisible, not divine. You're admitting it's useful, Marcus said. What's more godly than helping someone in need? Pip suddenly perked up. Wait, that's actually in our teachings. The third principle of the sacred path. The divine reveals itself through service. There you go, Marcus said. You're not breaking your faith. You're fulfilling it. The crowd was starting to shift. Marcus could feel the mood changing from confusion and anger to something else. Curiosity, possibility. A voice called out from the audience. If the human can touch the stone, can we? I mean, probably not without protective gear, Marcus said. The radiation thing is real. But with proper shielding? Sure. Why not? But that means... Another voice started. It means the stone can be studied, Scholar Thexnor said, bubbling excitedly. Examined. Understood. Think of what we could learn. The formation process, the radiation properties, the cosmic history encoded in its structure. It means we've wasted 10,000 years, someone else said bitterly. No, Pip said, standing up straighter than Marcus had ever seen him. It means we spent 10,000 years learning to work together, learning to respect something greater than ourselves, learning to find peace in shared wonder. That's not wasted. That's the whole point. Marcus smiled at the little blue alien. See? You get it. Vormesh took a deep breath with both mouths. Very well. Human, you may take a sample of the stone. Not for purchase, not for trade, but as a catalyst for the new understanding you have brought us. Works for me, Marcus said. But, Vormesh continued, and his voices carried authority again, you will stay for the consecration of the new temple doctrine. We will need perspective from someone who sees the universe differently than we do. How long will that take? 3 days. Marcus groaned. I've got a delivery deadline. Then I suppose, Vormesh said with the first genuine smile Marcus had seen from him, your cargo will be late. Consider it penance for destroying a religion. I didn't destroy it, I just remodeled it. 3 days, Vormesh repeated firmly. Marcus looked at Krell, who shrugged. He looked at Pip, who nodded encouragingly. He looked at the crowd, thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds all watching him with expressions that ranged from curiosity to hope. Fine, Marcus said. 3 days. But I'm billing you for the delay. Bill the divine, Vormesh said. See if they pay. And despite everything, despite the chaos and confusion and theological upheaval, the entire amphitheater laughed. 3 days turned into a week, which Marcus suspected was Vormesh's plan all along. But they were surprisingly the most interesting week of Marcus's life. The temple didn't shut down. Instead, it transformed. The barriers around the stone came down, replaced with radiation shields that actually made sense. Scientists arrived from a dozen species, all eager to study the artifact that had been forbidden for so long. Pilgrimages continued, but now they included educational components alongside the spiritual ones. Vormesh proved to be remarkably adaptable once he got over the initial shock. He and his fellow priests developed what they called the new doctrine of accessible divinity, which basically boiled down to, the sacred is what we make sacred, and understanding it doesn't diminish it. Pip became something of a celebrity. He started a new order called the Questioners, priests who combined traditional worship with scientific inquiry. Their motto was, faith through understanding, which Marcus thought was pretty catchy. Krell got promoted to head of temple security, and immediately used his new authority to reduce the number of ceremonial guards and increase the number of actual safety officers. He also started a mentorship program, teaching young aliens about practical security versus ceremonial security, which he claimed was way more interesting than standing around looking imposing. On the 7th day, the temple held what Vormesh called the first festival of questions. Instead of silent worship, pilgrims were encouraged to touch the stone, safely shielded, and share what their species had learned about the universe. It was chaotic, loud, and occasionally resulted in heated debates, but it was also, in Marcus's opinion, way more interesting than quiet meditation. Marcus stood in the repair bay, watching the final piece of valancite being installed in his thruster housing. The temple's engineers had helped, which cut the repair time in half. So, Krell said, leaning against Marcus's ship, you're actually leaving. Job to finish, Marcus said. Martian potatoes don't deliver themselves. You could stay. Vormesh would probably make you an honorary priest or something. Hard pass, I'm not priest material. You completely reorganized their religion in less than a week. By accident, Marcus pointed out, and I'm not sticking around for the follow-up. Change is messy. They need to figure out the details themselves. Pip appeared carrying a small box. Before you go, we wanted to give you something. Inside was a pendant made of valancite, carved into an intricate design. It glowed softly, warm against Marcus's palm. It's from the original stone, Pip explained. So you'll always have a piece of what you helped us discover. Which is what exactly? Marcus asked. That questions are sacred too, Pip said simply. That faith and knowledge aren't enemies. That sometimes the most divine thing you can do is admit you were wrong and choose to grow. Marcus put on the pendant. You know, for a species that's been doing religion for 10,000 years, you guys adapted pretty fast. We had a good teacher, Pip said. I didn't teach you anything, I just crashed my ship and needed some metal. You taught us that sometimes the answer to define God is I don't know, but let's figure it out together. Pip smiled, showing way too many teeth. That's worth more than 10,000 years of certainty. Vormesh arrived, looking far more relaxed than he had a week ago. Both his faces had a peaceful expression. Human. Your ship is repaired. You're free to leave. Thanks for not arresting me. Thanks for not being a god. That would have been much more complicated. Marcus laughed. What happens now? With the temple, I mean. We adapt, Vormesh said. We learn. We question. And yes, we still believe. Just differently. He gestured to the temple behind them, where thousands of pilgrims were milling about, touching the stone, taking readings, praying, debating. The stone brought us together for 10 millennia. Now it will teach us for 10 millennia more. That seems appropriate. Good luck with that. And you, Marcus Webb? Vormesh asked. What will you do? You've become famous across the sector. The human who touched the untouchable, the blasphemer who became a teacher, the cargo hauler who redefined divinity. Marcus climbed into his ship's airlock. I'm going to deliver some potatoes to Proxima, file the weirdest insurance claim in human history, and try not to accidentally destroy any more religions. A noble goal, Krell said. Yeah, well, we'll see how long that lasts. Marcus sealed the airlock and powered up his systems. The new thruster housing worked perfectly, smooth and quiet. Through his viewport he could see Pip, Krell, and Vormesh waving. Behind them the temple gleamed in the light of Kethra's 3 moons. He fired up his engines and lifted off, leaving the sacred garden of eternal contemplation with 1 fewer statue and 1 completely transformed theology. 3 weeks later, Marcus received a message. It was from Vormesh. "Human," the message said, both voices somehow conveying amusement. "You'll be pleased to know that 17 more humans have visited our temple since you left. All cargo haulers, all immune to the stone's radiation, all equally confused about what the fuss was about." Marcus groaned. The message continued. "We've had to add a new section to our doctrine, the chapter of human practicality. It's quite popular. The questioners are considering making Define God our official greeting. Pip says hello. Krell says the next time you're in the sector, drinks are on him. And I wanted to tell you that sometimes the universe sends us exactly what we need, even if it arrives in the form of a crashed cargo hauler and a man too stubborn to read warning signs." Marcus smiled despite himself. "Also," Vormesh added, "we've declared your crash site a holy landmark. The Statue of Humility, we're calling it. St. Vexthor would have appreciated the irony. Safe travels, Marcus Webb. May you continue to accidentally enlighten the galaxy." Marcus saved the message and plotted his next route. Proxima colonies, Martian potatoes, 300 kilos of freeze-dried cargo that was definitely going to be late. He touched the Valancite pendant around his neck, felt its warmth. "Define God," he said to himself, grinning. Turned out the answer was simpler than anyone thought. Not a being, not a force, just the thing that makes you question, learn, and grow. And if that was divinity, then maybe humanity had been practicing it all along. Marcus engaged his faster-than-light drive and disappeared into the stars, leaving behind a religion transformed, a temple enlightened, and a galaxy that would never look at cargo haulers quite the same way again. Somewhere in the universe, another stone waited on another world. Another mystery beckoning, another untouchable artifact surrounded by believers who'd never thought to ask why. Marcus made a mental note to check his navigation charts. For research purposes only, of course. After all, someone had to ask the questions.